Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Story, where we discuss what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Canadian Story. I'm David Parker, and I'm here with my cousin, co-host, friend, co-entrepreneur, Zach Gerber, and my other friend and co-worker currently, and actually someone I admire quite a lot, Angelo. Angelo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me back, guys.
So, Angelo, since you were last year, a big event in your life has been a municipal election in our one of our wonderful cities in this country, Vancouver, although not quite as wonderful as it used to be. And that was what your documentary was about. So why don't you share a little bit with the listeners about what you were doing around that and why it's so important?
So as you know, David, we have a background in politics. We have a background in working in politics, working on campaigns. But what I realized at some point last year is that politics really is downstream of culture. It's a cliche, but it's just a fact. And we can do all the door knocking we want. We can do all the phone banking that we want. Ultimately, what the left is so good at is creating narratives and creating stories. And we don't do that. Vancouver is at the nexus of a very serious problem. British Columbia in general has a very experimental sort of view of addiction and homelessness. And I basically was being asked by everyone I knew to do some sort of documentary about what's going on with this huge spike in overdoses. More people have died from overdoses than COVID in BC. So eventually I hooked up with my good friend Aaron Gunn, and we made a decision together to make this movie. It's called Vancouver is Dying. And it currently has, I believe, 2.5 million views this month alone on YouTube. So we released it, filmed it over the past year, released it just a couple weeks before the municipal elections in British Columbia. And it really shocked us. The ripple that it caused was larger than I expected. I thought it would do well. I didn't expect it to get millions of views in a month. No. I didn't expect it to have it impact things electorally in such a dramatic way, but it has. So it's definitely, I know certainly for Aaron, it's what he's most known for now. For me, it's more so a testament to what we can do when we tell stories.
Yeah, and I just love that obviously, Zach and I are obsessed with stories. The Canadian Story is our podcast. Narrative is what my other podcast is about, is really true fiction, the truths we can find in stories. So this is a concept that's so near and dear to my heart. And I feel like Zach has heard me rant about it. So Zach, why don't you just ask Angelo a few questions? So I'll just get too excited and ask questions that maybe our listeners will want to know.
I have to be the reasonable one on this one.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So Vancouver is dying. Why?
Why? Well, it's complicated. Largely, if I'm going to really break it down into a simple understanding, the simple conclusion that we've come to is that Vancouver, much of British Columbia, but especially Vancouver, has been led by individuals who have basically turned the city into a large lab rat test. The test is to give out free drugs. The test is, frankly, to industrialize poverty and have individuals' lives destroyed. I know that sounds dramatic. I came from it. I came from a place of good faith, thinking that, you know what, we have people who want to prioritize treatment and getting back on your feet. And we have people who prioritize free drugs because people need it and free housing because people need it. And maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. It's not. Like, quite frankly, there are individuals in this society, in this city, who are, for lack of a better term, poverty pimps, where they rely on government grants, they rely on progressive governments that are in Vancouver, or provincial governments like the NDP in British Columbia, or even Trudeau's government, to hand them taxpayer dollars to continue that suffering. Vancouver, especially under the now former mayor Kennedy Stewart, just became a disgusting city. I can't describe it to people who aren't here, but in 4 short years, it deteriorated to the point where you would often see people urinating or defecating on the street. You would see random attacks go up to an insane margin. 1 in 4 Vancouverites are at risk of a random attack. You would see windows smashed. You would see these insane stories. And it just became the norm. Worse than that, I would say, is that these progressive governments have actually gaslit the public. That for Kennedy Stewart, when the media would come to him and say, hey, look, people are saying the city's not safe anymore, he would just say, yes, it is. He would just say, oh, actually, it is safe. This is a trend we've seen all along the Pacific Northwest. We've seen it in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in Portland, and notably Seattle. Seattle is really the inspiration for us. Seattle is the inspiration for our downfall as a society, as a city. And Seattle was the inspiration for the movie, because, of course, there's another movie called Seattle is Dying, which is absolutely fantastic. And there are these huge parallels. And notably, in real life, one of the parallels is that much of the city staff or the government staff that we have here are actually from Seattle or San Francisco. The Vancouver City Hall staff are all from San Francisco, right?
Wow. How does that happen?
How does that happen? Well, when you think about it, when you think about the way these echo chambers work, you have individuals who graduate and become bureaucrats. They become, people who put up red tape at City Hall or different levels of government. And they instill sort of this idea of equity, of all these woke terms, and they import all their friends that they went to Columbia with or whatever university they went with, and they all do it together. The Vancouver City Hall employs more communication staff than the White House, right? So it's just this bloated system where you have a city manager who says, you know what, we want to emulate some of these American cities, some of these progressive American cities. So we're going to put bike lanes everywhere, and we're going to have, free drugs. We're going to have vending machines that give out free drugs, and it's going to be a paradise. And to do that, well, we need experts on how to destroy cities. So we're going to import those experts and get their help to destroy the city. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, the police were defunded. The police asked for help. They asked for funding, and this previous mayor defunded them. It's a slow drip. And eventually we get to 2022 when 40 individuals are responsible for 6,300 crimes this year alone. So just to clarify that again, all these policies have amounted to one thing, which is lawlessness. You have 40 individuals who are responsible for over 6,000 crimes just this year alone in Vancouver.
That's insanity.
So to me, that's just anarchy, right? That's just, we spoke to the Vancouver Police Department. They would arrest people in the morning and they would be out by the evening. You see these stories all the time. So it's not just the city, it's the provincial government letting these people out. In short, without rambling on too much longer, this is what's happened to Vancouver and our province, that we've become an experimental place for what happens if you implement extremely radical progressive ideas. And it's anarchy. You have a revolving door justice system, and you have more people than ever dying from drugs because we're not trying to treat them anymore. We're trying to keep them hooked.
Yeah, gosh, I have so many questions already. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you said earlier, something super interesting. What do you mean by industrialized poverty?
So to give you an example, there's this group called VANDU, and VANDU is an alliance of drug users, the Vancouver Alliance of Drug Users. I forget what the N's for. And what they did was they went to the city and said, we don't like the fact that the city sends down street sweepers, who are people that clean up the street, because it impedes on our home, which is the street. So we want money from the government and we'll take care of our streets. So the government then gives this drug user liberation group hundreds of thousands of dollars and takes away street sweepers, government-funded street sweepers from that area of the city. So what follows? What follows is a giant mountain of garbage that is never cleaned up because the individuals who run these groups are basically just benefiting from unlimited grants being given to them. Now, under the new administration, their contract has been revoked. And interestingly enough, in the Global News article that reported that their contract with the city's been revoked, they admit that all the money just went to their organizers. They didn't use any of the money to actually clean the street. So that's just one example. There are other groups like DULF, which is the Drug User Liberation Front. The Drug User Liberation Front, alongside a city councillor, handed out free crack, free cocaine, free meth, free Adderall in front of the Vancouver Police Department station. And they were handing them out to anyone who wanted them, 3 grams a pop for free. That is yet another group that is getting these ridiculous grants for equity and to quote unquote save lives from the government. Because their pitch is not that we're sleazy criminals who want free money. Their pitch is that we want to save lives. And the way we save lives is with safe supply. Okay, well, why don't these people come and get safe supply from the government? Well, they don't feel safe. They don't feel safe to come to the government. They come to us for safe supply. So give us the money, we'll buy the drugs and give them safe supply.
So to clarify, are those drugs legal in British Columbia?
So it's a really gray area. They are now being officially decriminalized, but anyone who's been looking into this thing has known that these drugs have been decriminalized for years, notionally, right? The fact that they're officially decriminalizing them now is really just a performative thing, because you won't go to jail. You're not going to go to jail if you have drugs. Mm-hmm. You just won't. The attorney general just won't. You won't be prosecuted. So they basically are. And the fact that we had a sitting city councillor holding crack and cocaine and handing it out for free in front of the police tells you how crazy the situation has gotten. And it hasn't helped save any lives. It's just killing more people, because despite the fact that that material or that type of drug is quote unquote clean, meaning it doesn't have fentanyl in it, drugs are still bad for you. Crack is still bad on its own. Even the vanilla crack is still bad. And I think we've forgotten that. And what we've also forgotten is a lot of these drug users want fentanyl. They're addicted to the fentanyl. So when I tell people that are not from here about like what we're doing here and what these poverty pimps were who industrialized poverty, it kind of seems strange, because it's so obvious what it is, right? It is poverty pimps. It is groups of individuals, the same individuals who did not like the movie very much, who are getting tons of money off of the continued misery of individuals. These are people who, frankly, do not want to see addicts get better, because if addicts get better, then they no longer have a source of income. Mm-hmm. So they have this sort of dark, continuance of suffering, and it's super messed up.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I have one more, and then I'll hand it back over to David, who has hopefully by now tempered his excitement. You said the police are sometimes arresting people and then they are released the same day. What is that process like, and how and why is that happening?
Yeah, so in Vancouver, we have the Vancouver Police Department. So the city has its own police force. It doesn't have the RCMP. Within that context, when someone is arrested, and we got this in the documentary from Erzu Zarabian, who is the crime analyst for the Vancouver Police Department. When someone is arrested, it's not the city that presses these charges. Ultimately, it's the province that decides, right? And up until fairly recently, the Attorney General of British Columbia was David Eby, who's now the Premier. And David Eby is sort of a proponent, a major proponent, I would say, not sort of the revolving door justice system. So you would have someone arrested for vagrancy, for vandalism. I mean, you have people arrested for crazy things. I mean, there was someone who was arrested for randomly stabbing someone in the stomach, and he was let out. So we're not talking about the fact that they're letting out people who may have broken a window or done something inappropriate. They're letting out people who are violent. And in that case where they let someone out that committed assault, he disappeared immediately. They don't know where he is.
Right, of course.
So why are they doing that? That is also in line with this new American system that we're seeing in a lot of cities, Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, San Francisco. Until very recently, San Francisco had an attorney general who was all about the revolving door justice system, who believed that it was oppressive to be putting people in jail, so we should be letting them out. And that attorney general, I believe, was just thrown out in an election. So people are really pushing back against this, but that's basically what we have in British Columbia, right? You have think about the resources that are being spent on the 40 individuals committing 6,300 crimes. Like, just think about that. When we talk to police, they know who these guys are. They're like, yeah, that's Joe. We arrest him, a couple times a week. Like, it's just, it's more than a couple times a week. What am I saying? So it's a crazy, crazy system. And as much as we say Vancouver is dying, and as much as this became a municipal issue, there's really only so much the Vancouver police could do when the government just, lets these people out.
David, your turn.
So would you, venture to say that a small fringe minority with unacceptable views has taken over our institutions?
Yeah, I would venture to say that it's a very original thought of you have there, David. But yeah, I mean, if you look at most of these institutions, particularly with city governance, the political stripes are very, very evident and very, very one-sided. I don't know what it is. Conservatives have some sort of allergy to municipal politics, because when it comes to school boards, when it comes to, park boards, when it comes to city hall, conservatives just completely divorce themselves. And that's changing now. We see, particularly with school boards in the US, there's been this huge revolt. But basically, funnily enough, the level and branch of government that affects us the most in our daily life is completely lopsided to one end. So, I would say, yeah, you have a very, very fringe minority with radical views, whose radical views are accepted to be used in the public because so few people care about municipal politics. I mean, the turnout for the election was 36%. Other jurisdictions have 25% in British Columbia. Nobody cares. So when nobody cares, that's when you have really radical individuals who manage to take things over. It's the same in a lot of municipalities across Canada. I mean, even in Alberta, you have these sort of NDP-esque mayors who take over, and then all of a sudden people are defecating in the street and people are getting shot with crossbows, which has happened here. And you wonder what happened, and what happened is the adults are no longer in control.
I think it's so important what you just said, and I want to talk a little bit about maybe what you're seeing with the rise of Pierre, the rise of the freedom movement, now the rise of the adults, let's call it, who are like, no, we actually aren't going to just give people drugs and let them run around committing crimes over and over again. What are you seeing in terms of engagement, and how would you encourage people who want to get engaged to begin participating in municipal politics? Because I think there's a lot of people that have woken up to the realization that they have to do something, but not a lot of people to tell them what to do. So maybe share how you've seen people make a difference in municipal politics, and maybe the steps you would take to get involved, because you've been involved in politics for a while. You've entered this municipal space that a lot of even conservative organizers never get into. Maybe share some of your wisdom with us.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you why you should never get into it, or you should get into it, I should say. But it was very painful for me to get into it, because I've never faced so much vitriol as I have in the municipal level, which is crazy, because when you think of municipal government, you think of potholes and making sure the lights work and sewage systems. You don't think about this ideological stuff. But the fact that we've had so much pushback and such a vindictive pushback tells you that we struck at the nerve of the problem. So for those interested, like, you go attend city hall meetings, attend hearings, that, you know, you're allowed to get up in front of the mayor and give him a piece of your mind, or her a piece of your mind. You're allowed to connect with city councilors. You're allowed to form organizations and lobby groups, right? Nothing stops you from doing that. But beyond that, I would say educate yourself on what they're trying to get away with. They are relying on your apathy, right? I'll say that again. They are relying on your apathy. That is how they manage to get away with things. They want you to work your job 9 to 5, as we all do, and go home and watch TV and go to sleep and don't pay attention to what they're doing. The last thing they want is you paying attention. So, you know, really educate yourself. I was really ignorant to a lot of the facts. And going into this, I really couldn't believe how many people spoke to us, former addicts, who said that if they were given free drugs, they would be dead right now. So many people in good faith think, you know what, safe supply, we need to do that so they don't get poisoned, and so on and so forth. Most people are okay with that because we're ignorant. But then you talk to a room of 12 ladies who are all recovered addicts, and they all say they'd be dead right now if there were free drugs. So then that sends you down this rabbit hole of, why are we not offering treatment? Why is treatment not even an option anymore? Why is the option, here, we'll give you free drugs to sustain this? You need to ask these questions, and you come to some pretty bleak conclusions. But ultimately, it should be your love for your fellow man that motivates you. That person that's on the street is someone's brother, it's someone's son, it's someone's daughter, it's someone's mother. Like, that's a human being. And they're stuck there, and there are forces that want to keep them there. And ultimately, you don't want that, because that could be you. Ultimately, you want to see people recover. You want to see people get better and to get control of their lives back. I mean, that's certainly my motivation. So, you know, a lot of that happens at the municipal level. A lot of it happens at the provincial level as well. You know, beyond just the homelessness issue, beyond the crime issue, there are other issues municipally that matter, right? Your property taxes, making sure that the city is working properly. All these things matter. And there are certain jurisdictions where, gosh, 1,000 votes, you get elected as mayor. You know, like it is so attainable. And if Conservatives want to have any hope in the future, they have to work at all levels of government. They absolutely must. Because if you look at the left, they've created a very efficient ecology where they take students at a university and they run them for school board, or they run them for city hall, or they get them a job at city hall. And then they graduate them to the provincial legislature after they've been city councillor for a few years. And then from there, maybe they go federal, or maybe they go work for a third party PAC or something like that. That is how the left works. Whereas with the right, it seems that we just rely on the system of waiting for a lawyer to retire in his 60s and then running him for some position somewhere. And that doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So
what are you seeing with Pierre and the rise of these new people who want to get involved? What do you like? Give me a little bit of your like armchair analysis of what you see happening in the world of politics in Canada.
So iPolitics had a poll out the other day that showed Pierre winning with 18 to 34-year-olds. That's never happened before for Conservatives, not in my lifetime at least. And that is coming from the NDP, which is why the NDP is attacking Conservatives so relentlessly. It's because a lot of young people are going Conservative. What Pierre ultimately has done is he hasn't just coalesced the base, but he's activated new people who have never been into politics before. I remember going to his rallies and meeting all these people that have said they've never voted before. Every federal election, we always focus so much on how are we going to win back the people who voted for Trudeau? How are we going to persuade them? And so far, that hasn't been a successful endeavor. What we haven't focused on, and what I think I'm seeing now, is what about the people who just don't vote? What about the people who, for whatever reason, have chosen to opt out of politics or never opt in to begin with? We're now seeing more and more people realize the importance of politics because, frankly, life has gotten bad enough where they have to be involved. So in the city of Vancouver, you had Kennedy Stewart get the exact same amount of votes as he did in the last election. And you had Ken Sim, who's now the mayor, get a record-shattering vote count. He got votes from people who never vote. And they only came out to vote because there are people being set on fire randomly in Vancouver, that things have gotten bad enough that they've been pushed to speak up. I think the other thing that Pierre is doing that I would hope the movie had some effect on, and I've been really surprised by, is that he's come out against these radical policies. It's something that no other leader has done, that he's taking these really ballsy approaches to saying, you know what, free drugs actually kills these people. He did a video where he's walking down East Hastings on Vancouver. East Hastings, for those listening, is just the worst area of Vancouver. And he's walking around talking to people. Nobody ever does that. So what he's proposing is really something no one's been willing to touch until the moment you touch it and you normalize it and you realize that actually this is common sense. Right? that this is what's happened to us as a country, is we've been so gaslit that, it's like it's like we have a pool. We have a swimming pool, and we have someone on the other side of the pool saying, don't jump in, it's freezing. You're going to freeze to death. And then Pierre just cannonballs in, right? And someone has to be the first one to jump in the pool and to say, it's okay, I've jumped in the pool. It's nice. You can handle it. And then we can have a pool party. So I think that's it. It takes courage, and it takes individuals who are willing to really take the bullets. And he's been taking bullets. His stance on these issues around addiction and homelessness immediately drew criticism, as I'm sure he knew it would. Right? It immediately drew criticism. Oh, he's exploiting the poor. Free drugs save lives. It's all BS. Right? Yeah, free drugs are a bad thing.
The free drugs save lives thing, that like really bugs me because, and it's something you said earlier really bugs me. We need to control the supply so that these, so the people aren't poisoning themselves, as if methamphetamine is good for you in the first place. Like the whole conversation is skewed. Like free drugs and safe drugs, those chemical compounds aren't good for your body. They kill people. And we know that. And to debate that is just a ridiculous waste of time.
Yeah. Oh, it's not only that, it's also depressing, right? I remember I spoke to an addict who said that it would have felt very depressing for them if a doctor or someone said, look, the best we can do for you, you are so damaged that the best we can do for you is just have you moderately addicted to drugs for the rest of your life. Like, that's a very dark conclusion. And by the way, that's the conclusion that Dr. Bonnie Henry has come to. Dr. Bonnie Henry, our provincial health officer, has said that if you're an alcoholic, there are remedies for that. We can get you treatment. But if you're addicted to hard drugs, there's not anything we can do. The best we can do is give you some sort of compound of a drug that's not as aggressive and just keep you hooked on that, because you're such a wreck of a human being that you can't survive without being addicted to something, right? Think about what that does to someone's soul, to someone's psyche, to be told that. And in addition to that, think about how many pharmaceutical companies are benefiting from the government buying methadone supplies and all these different opioid pills that keep people alive. it's a massive grift. It's a massive grift.
Do you see any backdoor deals in any of that between pharma and some of these people enacting the policies? Have you sniffed into any of that?
The provincial health officer before Bonnie Henry, his name is Kerry something. I'm forgetting it right now. He was the provincial health officer before Bonnie Henry, is now the chair for a pharmaceutical company. So there's a huge overlap. There's a huge overlap between our healthcare system and the pharmaceutical companies. There just is. And again, no one looks into it. No one wants to look into it because it's all, why would you want to look into it? It's saving people's lives. It's none of your business. Why do you care? Right? It's the perfect scam. But what nobody wants to talk about is that when drug users get these drugs that are lighter opioids or whatever you want to call them, they don't use them because they don't have a kick to them. They're not strong enough. So they sell them on the black market and they go and buy hard drugs. They go and buy fentanyl. We keep talking about how drugs have been poisoned with fentanyl. We don't talk about how drug users are addicted to fentanyl because their addiction has been so saturated and so it's been worsened so much that they need a drug as hard as fentanyl, right? Fentanyl is an insane, if you touch fentanyl with your bare skin, you'll die, right? That's how dangerous fentanyl is.
That's insane.
Just with your bare skin.
Oh yeah, there was a police officer. She was a woman, I think. They were on some sort of crime scene. I think this happened last year. And she accidentally touched, she didn't realize she touched it with her bare skin, went home and died. That's how hard these drugs are, right? So to get to the next point, if we can concede that, yeah, this isn't working, the other side of this is our border. Where are these drugs coming from? A lot of them are coming from China, right? Some are coming from North Korea. There's like meth factories in North Korea. China produces so many drugs, and we have these weak borders that just allow everything to flow through. So that's a whole other issue. But ultimately, it's shame on them, but it's shame on us for being such an easy sell,
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting that there's this new kind of generation of activists that are coming up. You've had Jordan Peterson on your podcast. You've been inside that sphere. There's Elon Musk, what he's doing with Twitter. There seems to be this new kind of consensus of a generation that are kind of like, wait, maybe we should go back to common sense a little bit. Maybe we should actually start having these conversations. I mean, you go and you see what's happening. And you're like, okay, we're going to have a conversation about this. I'm going to make a documentary. Now we're having a conversation about that conversation that you started, and the dialogue continues. And I think that the dialogue used to exist in mainstream media, but it doesn't really anymore. You've done work with Post Millennial. You've had your own podcast. What do you think of this new evolving alternative media is a word, but an alternative way of communicating in a sense?
Well, it's the future and it's what's necessary, right? Whether I like it or not, it's what's necessary. In a perfect world, the role of journalists is to report the truth. And that's just not what's happening anymore. So you need these alternative sources, and you need to be in a position where I don't want to say you need to be in a position, but I would say it's quite incredible that a documentary put together with like a rinky-dink budget gets more views than the CBC. That's kind of crazy when you think about it, that this large behemoth of an organization that gets billions of dollars in taxpayers, nobody wants to watch anymore. Nobody wants to engage with because it's become so toxic. And here you have like this ragtag group of guerrilla filmmakers and journalists who can go and interview people on the street and get millions of views, right? I'm a big believer in the free market of ideas. And I'm a huge believer in just a meritocracy, that at the end of the day, if you just create good content, it'll flourish, right? And conservatives for such a long time never understood that. They never understood the effect of, say, the inconvenient truth, right? Why would Al Gore go and make a documentary about global warming? Well, the inconvenient truth had a massive effect on American policies around climate change. Like, I'm not saying everyone should go and make a documentary. What I'm saying is that it's not enough to just go to voters every 4 years and say, hey, I'm going to lower your taxes. Because you have one side saying, hey, I'm going to lower your taxes. And the other side is saying we're all going to die in a blazing inferno and the sun is going to explode and kill us. Like, and I'm not saying that we should exaggerate things and it'll just be a race to the bottom. But what I'm saying is that voters are emotional. People are emotional. People want stories. We're no different from the cavemen sitting around the fire talking about stories, talking about grand myths. We're the same creature. We haven't evolved at all. We're the exact same. Our brains are the exact same. So ultimately, this was an issue that was way too complicated for your average person, your average Joe, to come home after work tired, to sit there and go through 10 pages of Google just to figure out what's going on. Nobody has time for that, right? What they have time for is to flick on Netflix, turn on TV, and see what's going on. So what we sought to do is, the question we asked ourselves at the beginning was, how can we create something where it's a one-stop shop for everything? Where we needed to make sure that someone can watch this from start to finish, and everything they need, they get it from the movie. And more than that, they can take the link very conveniently and send it to others and say, hey, watch this, right? And debate about it. Like come back and debate us, right? Like, as per usual, the other side doesn't want to debate it at all. They just want to shut it out because they can't debate it, right? When we premiered this, we had a movie theater premiere for it, and we had protesters, right? We had some guy with like 3 masks on screaming at us. And, they're not able to put forward an argument because they don't have one. They don't have a coherent argument. So conservatives need to create stories. And I'm not saying you need to create a 1 hour long movie or a 2 hour long movie, but you need to understand and shift your language in terms of how you convey ideas, because, we all speak English, but we don't all communicate the same. So that's what I would say that needs to happen going forward. I never thought in a million years that this would do this well. And I see a lot of potential for other media, whether it's True North or Western Standard or what you guys are doing, whatever. If you don't do it, no one else will, basically. So that's where we're at. You got to do the work. Independent media is taking over completely. And I think it's only going to grow from here.
So let's talk about the future. You're a man who thinks about a lot of things. You're a man who studies history, who enjoys intellectual conversation. You've talked to some of the greatest minds of our generation who are leading the charge on things. What do you see the future looking like? Where are we headed as not just a conservative movement, but Western civilization? Let's go big picture here.
Oh boy. See, I'm a little pessimistic. I'm pessimistic and optimistic. I'm at a very broad perspective. As a Canadian, I think we're a joke on the international stage. I think we're seen as a colony. I think China uses us as like a money laundering colony. And I think that's a huge concern, that China has absolutely interfered in our elections. And that's a huge concern. Besides that, I think there's great opportunity in where we are as a country. When you look at the way the world is going, we're heading into this cold winter. Canada is in this great position where we have all these resources. We have the water, we have the minerals, we have the energy. We have enough energy to save the world from a cold winter. We have enough energy to tell every dictator to F off, that we're going to produce the cleanest energy to the Western developed world. But we're not doing anything with it. So I'm so frustrated with our country I don't have a lot of good things to say about our country, but the difference is that I'm frustrated because I think we can do so much better. My expectation is that we will do something better. But it needs to be a change in leadership. It needs to be brave leadership, whether that's Pierre Poilievre as prime minister or Daniel Smith as premier in Alberta. It takes bold leadership to be willing to do something ballsy and different. I think if we can get strong leaders in place, we can begin rolling out treatment for drug users or drug addicts. I'm saying drug users. I'm using their language. See how they've manipulated me. They're addicts. We need to get treatment for these people. We need to build centers for rehabilitation. We need to get people that have mental illnesses the help they need. We need to get clean water on reservations. You know what I mean? Like there's so many basic things we need to do in this country, but the government is too busy oppressing hunters at the moment and trying to take their rights away. So I think the potential for Canada, our ceiling is so unbelievably high, but boy, are we starting from the bottom.
I 100% echo your sentiment. I've said it on the podcast a few times. I think Canada is a country that does not yet take itself seriously. And that would be why I feel we're not taken seriously on the international stage. We are a country who is still young. We are a country who is still, I think, going through adolescence. But I think the potential that lies within our nation is absolutely massive. We have incredible and deep resources to draw on. We have the ability to build and supply infrastructure and energy to the Western world and beyond. One of the things that I think we need to do, so you mentioned the guns, and the targeting of hunters, and you also mentioned the leaky borders, letting all these drugs through. We need to stop spending money on gun buyback programs and all of that stupid bullshit, and we need to get our border sorted out so that the illegal guns don't come in and the illegal drugs don't come in, and then we need to put criminals here in prison so that the drugs stop circulating, and then we need to help the people that need help. And we also need to distribute our energy, and we need to build a military, and we need to take ourselves seriously. And those are all things that we as Canadians and as a country, Canada, are able to do. But you're right, it's going to take bold motion forward, and there's no other way to do it. And I hope that that's something that we can do. I really do.
I think I agree with both of you, but I'd be interested, Angelo, as someone who is watching it from BC. What do you think of the ability of our country to stay together if we continue to go down this road of the Trudeau seems to be taking us on? Because is there an element perhaps in all of us that thinks maybe Toronto needs to become a city state and then we could all be, a better place, right? But what is it about, I don't know, watching from kind of the outside in BC, watching what's happening in Alberta, what is your take on whether Canada as a whole can continue?
It seems like our country isn't working anymore. And a lot of that sentiment was already there. The pandemic definitely exacerbated it. I mean, just at a broad federal level, try getting a passport. You're not going to be able to do it, right? Try getting children's Tylenol. There's a supply shortage. America, the US comes in and says, hey, we have millions of bottles for children's Tylenol. Here, have them. We can't take them because there's no French on the bottle.
What?
Right? So we're just kind of not a serious country. We're not a serious country. We're a country where if you have a disability or a chronic illness or a mental illness, we recommend to kill you as an option. We're a country where if you're a disabled veteran who needs a chairlift in her home and is wondering why it's delayed, we recommend to kill you as an option. That is what's happening in this country. So in terms of national unity, as far as I can tell, and I'm saying this, I'm an immigrant, like my parents are immigrants. We came to this country from Greece. this division between the East and the West is bizarre. Quebec is bizarre to me as a newcomer to Canada, because Quebec, for all intents and purposes, is its own country. It's its own country that also has the benefits of not being its own country because of equalization, right? So for all intents and purposes, that's already a division. The Maritimes are their own mess. And then Ontario, frankly, has nothing in common with me. I have nothing in common with my fellow brethren, right? Even in BC, where you could say BC is this sort of leftist utopia, you're pretty hard pressed to find a lot of people who love Trudeau. It's more of an Ontario thing. You'll find people who are NDPers, but you're not going to find any hardcore Trudeau lovers. So the West is very divided. And what I see happening in Alberta particularly is, the Sovereignty Act, for one. I think what we'll need to see next is what happens if Bill C-11 passes. Is Alberta going to abide by that? Is Alberta going to allow its internet to be censored, or is it going to use Starlink to change everything? We already know that Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba and the Yukon are not abiding by the gun ban. And this is sort of how a country unravels in terms of a federalist system, where you have provincial leaders that just say, what if I just don't do what you're saying you want us to do? Like, what's going to happen exactly? And that's a dangerous precedent, but it's a precedent that was set by Justin Trudeau. That's a precedent that was set by Justin Trudeau when he didn't respect provinces. It's a precedent he set when he brought in an Emergencies Act and trampled on old ladies with his RCMP. That's a precedent that he set that is unraveling the country. The country's never been this divided. It's just never been this divided. So that's worrying to me. The regionalism is worrying to me. I'm not a separatist, but what I do know is that the West is where Canada derives much of its value from, right? I'm just saying that as a fact, like economically, fiscally, if Ontario was its own country, it would be Michigan, right? Like it would just be the state of Michigan. It wouldn't be
a wealthy country. It wouldn't be a wealthy country.
It would be mid-level. Quebec certainly wouldn't be a wealthy country, nor would the Maritimes, right? If Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC were its own country, it would almost instantly be one of the richest. So, that's a real problem when you're in a country that doesn't work. And so many people have been talking about this. So many people have said, like, why is it that the pandemic's over? Flight systems don't work. Nothing works in this country anymore. You can't get anything to just work the way it's supposed to. Everything's bureaucratic. And nothing seems to be getting better. Interest rates continue to rise. Eventually, I'm worried that there's an invisible line that we cross. Maybe we've already crossed it, where people just don't buy into the idea of Canada anymore. I know young people certainly don't, right? People my age or younger, there's no patriotism towards this country. And it's very difficult, quite frankly, to have patriotism towards a country that has something like MAID, like the assistance in suicide. Like it's very difficult for me. It's very difficult. So I'm very, very worried for the unity, for the sake of the unity of the country. And we need someone or a group of people who can truly unite us, not just by our frustration of how things are, but by what makes us good Canadians, what makes us proud to be Canadian, right? I miss being proud to be Canadian. I want that feeling back. It's that feeling we had in the Olympics. Remember when we had the Olympics here?
Yes, I was there. I was going to school, and so I was at those Olympic Games, like running around on the beautiful streets of Vancouver. I remember thinking that Vancouver was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever been in the world. So it used to be a beautiful city.
Yeah, I want that feeling back. I want to feel excited to be Canadian. That's my goal, at least.
No, we're drawing to a close here. So Zach, do you have any last minute questions?
Why don't you remind us where we can get the documentary? What's it called, and how long is it? Just out of curiosity.
Good question. I think it's just over an hour. It's available for free on YouTube. So just look up Vancouver is Dying, and it'll be on Aaron Gunn's channel. So it has 2.5 million views. It's also available on Aaron Gunn's Facebook page. So if you just look up Aaron Gunn on Facebook, you can find it there. Most people go to the YouTube. So Vancouver is Dying. For the first few weeks, they were suppressing it pretty hard. Like, it was getting, you would look at Vancouver is Dying and you would get some CTV clip from 5 years ago related to like salmon fishing, like completely unrelated, even though the video was getting like 10,000 views per hour. So now it should be the very first thing you search. Just Google Vancouver is Dying.
We'll put a link for that in the description, everyone. Yeah. David?
Yeah.
Well, Angelo, I want to thank you for realizing the same thing that I realized, which is that culture is upstream from politics. I think more than politics is downstream from culture. What we create, the stories we tell, that's what defines our politics. And you played a huge role in changing that narrative in Canada with Vancouver is Dying. So thank you for doing that, for all the political work you do, for the better Canada that you fight for, even though you're not proud to be Canadian right now. I feel exactly the same way. And I think even though we don't feel proud, we obviously must have patriotism, because look at how hard we're fighting for where we're from. So, or what we call home. So thank you for the fight that you're putting on, and for everything that you've done.
Well, thank you for having me on, guys. You guys are making great content. Keep doing what you're doing, because again, someone's got to do it. You don't do it.
Exactly. But nobody else was doing the Great Canadian Podcast. So we thought, we'll have to just talk to Canadians until somebody comes along.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Angelo.
Thank you for listening to The Canadian Story. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The CAD Story. That's the CAD Story. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let's work together to remind Canadians how great their country is.